Did you watch the first season of Andor? Did you enjoy it? Well, did you watch the first season of Young Jedi Adventures? Did you enjoy that? If you enjoyed both, do you enjoy them for the same reasons? And if you enjoyed one but not the other, why is that? What was it about the one that appealed to you when the other did not? Now, both Andor and Young Jedi are Star Wars stories, of course. They are, however, vastly different from one another. Star Wars, at its beginning, was a space opera about a rebellious paramilitary organization attempting to overthrow an evil empire with the help of a wizard with a laser sword. Oh, and there's sound in space. From that original movie, we have, in the current Disney timeline, 12 films, including the Clone Wars movie, 14 different television and streaming series, Skeleton Crew will make 15, and over 6 novels, including the adaptations of the sequel trilogy films. That's a lot of content, and I didn't even include video games and comic books. Now, with regard to novels, I did not include the original junior novels, young reader books, junior novel adaptations, or script books. I only counted the original novels, young adult novels, and film adaptations, which add to the stories of the sequel trilogy films and fill in some much needed details. So to say that we are experiencing a plethora of Star Wars content is almost an understatement. Also, this does not include the hundreds of stories that were told in the original Star Wars, now Legends Expanded Universe, which is rightly loved by many people. Can we reasonably expect that every piece of Star Wars content, or the content of any franchise really, will appeal to every fan of that franchise? No. You know, my daughter really likes Young Jedi, but thinks Andor is super boring because it's just old people standing around talking about stuff. And based on her age and perspective, that's a perfectly valid opinion. Unless you have a child of the proper age group to watch Young Jedi with, I don't think many adults would be that interested in the series. The host of one of my favorite Star Wars podcasts, Growing Up Skywalker, tried to watch the show in order to review it, but because they're two adults with no children at the present time, they could not maintain interest in it. And I don't fault you for it, Sam and Anna. If I didn't have a kid, I'd be right there with you. But I'm using Andor and Young Jedi as the polar extremes for the franchise to help illustrate a point. Not everything is made for you. Not everything's made for me. Not everything's made for my daughter. But Star Wars is made for everyone. It doesn't exclude anyone because it includes everyone. But just because you or I don't like a certain part of the franchise for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that we aren't all fans of the franchise. It just means we have different tastes. I don't really like Mexican food. That doesn't mean I don't like to eat. It just means I'd rather have Italian or Chinese. It's the same concept. Also, I can't stand the mix on the And Justice for All album, or the snare sound on Saint Anger. But I still enjoy the works of Metallica overall. We don't talk about Lulu. But Star Wars is different from a lot of other things I might try to compare it to. Star Wars is folklore, stories that grow and change with each person who has a share in passing them on. And what's interesting is, even though we put George Lucas's name at the top of he created Star Wars, even the original films weren't solely the work of George Lucas. At least, not the same way that Lord of the Rings was the work of Tolkien. Because Tolkien wrote his book on his own. He didn't have a team of collaborators. George Lucas, even on the original film, had the assistance of 3 other producers, a cinematographer, a composer, 5 editors in addition to himself, an art department, props, costumes, so on and so forth. A whole cast and crew to make a movie. It wasn't just him bringing it out of his mind whole cloth. And then Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi weren't even directed by Lucas, and had writers in addition to Lucas himself. The story was already growing and changing. The original 1976 Star Wars novel, which has George Lucas's name on it as the author, was actually ghostwritten by Alan Dean Foster. And that might help explain why Obi-Wan Kenobi and Owen Lars were brothers in the novel, but not in the films. Or maybe that's a convenient prequel retcon. Anyway, from the beginning, Star Wars was definitively a group effort, and it continues to be one. George might have found the spark, but we all carry the flame. One of my favorite things about folklore is that it changes over time, as each new generation adapts the old stories to modern times and adds new stories to the collected work. So we're going to see Star Wars continue to grow and change in our lifetimes, just like we have for the last 47 years. We are going to see what we held near and dear as children grow and adapt with new generations of fans. Some of those fans will be children, and some will be adults who just found Star Wars for the first time. But their perspectives, their opinions, are just as valid as our own. Whatever the entry point into the fandom is, they're here to celebrate the same thing we love for their own reasons. The one caveat to this sort of inclusion is when someone tries to belittle another fan's enjoyment of something. I'm not going to fault people who don't want to move on from Legends and enjoy the current timeline. That's their choice. However, I would respectfully ask that Legends fans extend the same courtesy to fans of modern Star Wars stories being made under Disney's oversight. Don't yuck someone else's yum just because you prefer the older tales. Mutual respect is important. There's no need for name-calling or being insulting as we all try to enjoy different aspects of the same thing. So, enjoy what you enjoy. Let others enjoy what they enjoy. There's more than enough content for all of us. And that's my take on things for this week. I'm going to take a break from talking about Star Wars for a bit and maybe even let another crew member from the FSF podcast take a turn next week. But I would like to know, what's your favorite piece of Star Wars content? And what got you into being a fan of the franchise? Let me know in a comment. I'd love to see how we all came to be fans of the same thing. So until next time, may the Force be with you as you live long and prosper.